Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry about last week, but things happened, so we're glad to be back. I am Jan Jeremias, one of your hosts today. I'm an integrative health and wellness coach and author who works with people and pets to help them overcome health challenges and live healthier lives. And I'm really excited to be joined on stage once again with my beautiful collaborator, co-host, dear friend, the amazing and very kind Mary Jane McQueen. And so, Mary Jane or MJ, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Jan. Yeah, so I know most of you here know, but just for the purpose of recording, I am Mary Jane or MJ, whichever you want to refer to me as. I'm good with it. And I'm the founder of my own creative studio where I help entrepreneurs to step into their light and share their gifts authentically and by co-creating visuals that align with their mission and vision. And as always, as Jan always shines brightly, even in the midst of turmoil and pivoting. I am joined with her, Jan Jeremias, today to share conversation and meditation. Excited to be here. Happy Friday, everyone.
Wonderful. So, Mary Jane, did you want to start out with our poem?
I certainly can do that. It says, you look in the mirror and wonder where she went. The joyful one, the confident one, the one who felt more like you. But listen to this. You haven't lost her. You've just lived through things that changed you. And that's not failure, that's growth. You've carried pain, joy, sacrifice, and strength. You've stretched in ways no one saw. Of course, you look different. Of course, you feel different. And maybe this version of you is becoming someone even deeper, wiser, softer, stronger. Give her time. Give her grace. You're not gone. You're growing.
So, welcome everyone once again. And we are so happy you're here with us today for this special gathering where we're exploring the theme Bloom Where You Are Planted. We welcome you just as you are in whatever season of life you're in, whether you're feeling rooted or restless, blooming, or just beginning to bud. So I want to start by sharing a personal story that's close to my heart. About 8 years ago, I thought I'd be moving from New Jersey, where I lived, to Portland, Oregon. I had my house on the market. I flew across the country to look for places to live, and everything seemed to be lining up. My house went into contract for sale, and I had this beautiful vision of my life out west. But when I arrived in Portland, I quickly realized financially this wasn't going to be sustainable for me. And I flew back home, still holding on to this hope that I would be able to make this move, trying to figure out how I could make it work. And just 1 week later, the contract on my house fell through and I was devastated. What I had been so excited about dissolved before my eyes. I slipped into a deep sadness, unsure why something I truly wanted hadn't worked out. About a month later, I was still feeling the weight of that loss when something unexpected happened. I was standing in line at Trader Joe's, a supermarket in the US, because all great messages happen in Trader Joe's, paying for my groceries. And as I turned around, there it was, a greeting card right in front of my face with the words on the cover that said, Bloom where you're planted. And in that instant, something shifted inside me. I thought I may not know why I'm meant to be here, but I'm here. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for now. That simple message stayed with me. It's a reminder that even when life doesn't go according to plan, even when we feel lost or disappointed, there's still possibility, growth, and even beauty in the very place we find ourselves. So today we gather in that spirit to reflect, to connect, and to open ourselves to the idea that maybe, just maybe, this moment, this place, this version of our life is exactly where we're meant to bloom. We're grateful for you're here. And so let's begin our conversation. So, not always easy to bloom where you're planted. And I think this brings up this whole idea of acceptance, of accepting what is going on in our life. I love the way Tara Brach actually refers to it as radical acceptance, not resignation, but like an action, like acceptance. Acceptance is an active form, it's an action. Mary Jane?
No, that's it's true, right? I mean, it can be so easy to slip into the that feeling of resignation when things aren't necessarily going the way we think they should be going. But as the saying goes, it's like if you want God to laugh, make plans. So that's often been the case. I mean, we in fact here experienced that this past week where we definitely we weren't resigned to the to what was going on, but we definitely had to pivot and redirect, and that's often what it is. It's about allowing the things to happen as they're happening. In the situation where we have some choice, I know that I'm not speaking to when there's situations where we the control is not ours at all, but really just to integrating that acceptance into our daily lives, that things are going to change. The only thing is the only constant is change, as they say. So it's like really like integrating that acceptance into our every day, and sort of using it as a tool for empowerment, and not slipping into the throes of feeling down and out. I'm not saying that you should avoid your feelings. Of course, you should feel your feelings and let those things come out, but it's just really about accepting and allowing. And there's a certain empowerment by that acceptance and allowing to move forward. It makes it a little softer. It doesn't feel as hard, even if it's a hard situation, because we feel like we have some sort of um, way to move forward, and looking at the perhaps the brighter side of life, and sometimes even the humor in the moment, because goodness knows life sometimes offers us many opportunities to get a laugh, sometimes at our own expense. I do this often, so Jan would know.
Yeah, I love this idea. And the image that comes to mind is one that I read from some work by Tara Brach, who talks about radical acceptance in her book, Radical Acceptance. And she talks about that whole idea of acceptance as being that active form of what she calls clear seeing, the Buddhist feeling of clear, Buddhist aspects of clear seeing or mindfulness. So being truly present with something, being one wing of the bird. And then the opposite wing, which is just as important, is that element of self-compassion that must come in, which allows it to soften and to kind of keeps it in check so that you don't you're not ruminating and overly obsessing on one end, and you're not going down the self-pity part on the other part of being compassionate, of feeling too bad for yourself or whatever, and the balance that you need between the two. And so I really loved that image in my mind of holding both, of being able to accept something and being able to allow that compassion element in, to allow it to soften a little bit. Yeah, no pity party. It's, yes, thank you, Mary Jane.
Yes, walking the middle way, Austin. Yes, it's so true. And that was one of our topics, and not so long ago in one of our conversations. So if some of you weren't here and haven't had the opportunity to take that in, it's in our recordings on our Spirit Born YouTube channel. But yeah, it's definitely walking the middle way for sure.
Seamus?
Yeah, and funny, that's exactly what was coming to mind as you were speaking there. Like original, like MJ, what you mentioned, and about this idea of the two different types of acceptances and the energy that goes with each type of acceptance. Like I've written down here, resigned acceptance versus engaged reception acceptance. And the kind of the words that go with that is when you're in resigned acceptance, you kind of give up, you're hopeless, like, and there's no action. It's kind of, oh, you're a victim and it's low energy and you just feel, oh, down, versus engaged acceptance, which is kind of openness to accept with an action in mind to, okay, this has happened. I've accepted it. I'm ready now to adjust and evolve and move through. And there's great hope and there's high energy and high control with that versus the low energy, low control of the other type of acceptance. And it sounds such a small difference between, two different types of acceptance. But there's a huge like energetic shift between resigned acceptance and engaged acceptance. And I think, the extreme of resigned acceptance versus the other extreme of radical acceptance. And it's funny, like that's exactly what I was thinking about when you mentioned that Tara Brach radical acceptance. It sounds like almost the opposite extreme of resigned acceptance. It's too out there, it's too positive, it's too um, much in pretense. Oh, and I'm just going to radically accept and I'm just going to plow through. And, it doesn't feel exactly comfortable. It doesn't feel right, but I'm just going to do it because it's the opposite and an extreme of the other option, the other extreme option, which is just resign to the thing, give up. I'm just going to go forward. And maybe through that radical acceptance, the way I interpret it is that it's maybe as damaging possibly as resigned acceptance because it's maybe some level of denial in there as well about what's actually happened. And you're just going to plow through and not really take the time. As you know, John, one of my favorite words is engage. And that middle way, like the walk in the middle way is through that ideal blend between those two extremes of resigned acceptance and radical acceptance is engaged acceptance.
Mhm. I think what
You're
Tara
just
Brach
stopping and
really,
walking through it. Yeah.
sorry, Seamus, I interrupted.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. But that was the point, I think, that the engaged acceptance seems to be a lovely middle way. And maybe that's my interpretation, what Tara talks about, radical acceptance. That's how it lands with me. And maybe she doesn't mean that, but that's certainly what I was picking up as I was kind of processing what's going on in the conversation so far, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it is an interesting word, radical acceptance and or radical, because I think we think extreme. And when she was talking, when and what I was reading that she's written, it's much more this way of being, like she said, that clear seeing of what's there. So being very mindful. So being in the moment and being with whatever it is and not running away from it necessarily, but being with it and having it be very active, as opposed to passive. And today during the meditation, we'll talk through a little bit, or I'll guide everybody through that a little bit. But also this idea of allowing that self-compassion to come in. So you don't, I think, come into that sort of like, I'm going to plow through and I'm just going to like move through it. And I'm going to, whatever, I'm going to pull up my, put my suspenders on and pull up my pants and just trudge along. And there's no room for anything at all. And then the opposite of that total hopelessness of going down that, as Mary Jane mentioned, that pity party, kind of thing where there's no hope at all, as you mentioned. And there is that balance and that, somewhat middle way, but it's not, there was a consciousness and an awareness about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's sort of a thing. It's about it's even though she uses the word radical, it's more about having a gentle awareness of when we're of when we're feeling vulnerable and allowing space for that, but not dwelling there, being mindful. I think that at least that's what I took it to be.
Mhm. Absolutely.
It's just to um yeah, not to suppress or ignore the feelings of things that are going on. Of course, we are all going to have moments where we need to, because you do need to feel those things to be able to move forward, but to be just, yeah, as you said, mindful, just being a little bit tender with yourself, allowing. compassion to guide. And I was thinking about when Seamus was speaking about the difference between the two extremes, if you want to call it, about resignation or mindful moving, or however you want to describe it. It's we really can feel the difference. Even when I say the word resignation or resign, there's a certain my body feels that. Like I can just definitely feel like there's a definite energy with that word um, that doesn't feel good in my body. Whereas when I say, being self-compassionate, being mindful, allowing for those tender moments, it really, when I say that, is a compassion. It's like there's a lot more lightness to that sort of feeling than resignation definitely has its negative connotations in many forms. So it's yeah, that was my take on it. But thank you, Seamus.
Yeah, thank you. Mhm.
And Susan, David kind of talks about this a little bit as well in toxic positivity, I think, and maybe touches on this a little bit as well. About it's back to balance, I think, really, and being in a position where you're like you going back to what you mentioned, like it still sits with me, John, like a heart that's prepared for anything. You know what I mean? When you're in that space, you're so attuned and ready. The earth could be falling apart, and you're still ready to begin to engage and make sense of, well, what this means for me in this very moment type of thing. And I think that maybe is what we're talking about here in the middle way is the property of that type of approach is that, you're not toxically positive. You're not, authentically putting a positive spin on things because you feel that's going to, help you navigate a way through. You're actually taking a little bit of a step back from that. And it's finding that middle ground, like as we've been talking about, that you experience again, like you just mentioned, MJ, about like the energy just doesn't feel right of accepting and giving up. The other energy is the energy of toxic positivity, and then it's an experiential thing of finding that middle ground in whatever situation you're in. And it might be a different middle ground depending on whatever, like from one day to the next, or whatever situation you're in to the next. But I think that's the skill maybe we're talking about here of being so adept and attuned to finding that dynamic middle ground. I think that can be a game changer because then you're so ready for whatever is happening to make the right choice in that moment, I suppose, and I think this is the part of maybe the nature of having the in the heat of the moment, having the mindset to be able to bloom no matter what's going on around you. Like, and I think that maybe is back to the theme of today's conversation is blooming, regardless of what type of situation you find yourself in. And I think that's the whole idea of finding that middle ground too, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, I mean, whether you call it the middle ground or I love, Tara Brach's reference to a bird that you cannot fly, a bird can't fly with either one, if one of those wings is missing. So
Mm.
you need that ability to have that clear seeing, that awareness, that presence. And you need that element of compassion along, that self-compassion and compassion. And you need both. I mean, I think of a bird that's trying to fly. And if one wing is more powerful than the other, then there's this imbalance, then there's this throwing off. There's like, it's kind of, it's going to go off in one direction or another. It's going to predominantly go to the right or to the left, to one extreme, where it needs the integration of both to be able to fly. And that's somewhere there's like they're all constantly balancing each other out with that awareness, and whether you're kind of super focused on what's going on, and you have to be aware, but you don't want to overly obsess and ruminate. And you also have to, so you have to like remind yourself to kind of come out of that way, that side, and move into into the compassion side, where you actually understand and you allow yourself a little bit of space and breath, and whatever's going on, you allow that in a loving way. And I think the key is, like I said, in a loving way.
I love that, Jen. Yeah, that's that's what sort of what I was trying to allude to before is really that is acknowledging our feelings and the circumstances that we might find ourselves in, but acknowledging them without judgment, because we as human beings tend to judge ourselves very harshly at times, and it's really giving ourselves the grace and ease to move through the situation um, the best we can, obviously, but just being compassionate to self. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Al, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I'd like to share a acronym from Bloom. So B as being a blessing, When earlier on you said about compassion, when we have the blessing of enjoying the nature and all that, and L is for the loving, the loving of the nature and whatever we see in our eyes, And it's so obliging, the O stands for obliging. When we move out to the nature and we enjoy it, and with open-heartedness, when the other O is open-heartedness, When we're seeing the nature, we feel it in our hearts, we feel it in our bodies, And and the final one is M, for magnificence, So when we feel the daily lives that we're moving through, we feel it with greatness and magnificence, So I put that the five letters into the chat so that everybody knows today's topic is bloom. Thank you.
That's so awesome. Alf, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to start calling you the master of the acronym because you find some amazing words that really just fit in with the themes and whatever. But yes, please do share them here. That would be awesome.
Yeah, no, I love it, Al. Thank you. And I think we all know what happens if we resist. If we constantly are fighting against what is truly happening. Um, and, I think we all know the results of whatever the inner turmoil, the anguish, the resistance that, the body resistance that happens, the physical resistance. Yes, absolutely, Austin. What we resist persists. And so true. Um, if we resist what's happening, there's no space for anything else. There's no space for growth. There's no space for possibility. There's no space for change. And basically, then there's no that, that's then there's like, then there's no hope because we are so stuck and there's no opportunity at all.
It's interesting whenever, because like I'm a nerd that way, and because I grew up in a generation where there was not the old Star Treks but the newer Star Treks, and it's like,
I know. I know the feeling. Yes.
so it's like whenever I hear the word resist or resistance, I'm like, oh yeah, like the Borg, resistance is futile.
I know. I always think the same thing. Yes. The next generation comes back. So I always think the same thing. Mary Jane.
Yeah,
Um,
but
resist,
it's true,
resistance
right?
is futile. Right. It is. It is.
It's all about, inviting, the invitation is to stop resisting what's beyond our control and just finding well, thank you, Amy, for justifying our ness.
Yeah.
Um,
Our nerdiness here.
but yeah, sometimes it's really just, yeah, trusting the process, even when we don't understand, because it's true. Sometimes when we're in the thick of it or when things are happening, we don't always understand. And I love, Jen, how you shared that in your story where I love how you said that all things become clear at Trader Joe's. So, um, but I just love that whole idea of the recognition. Um, is really just is really the key part of the process, right? Recognizing and not dwelling there, um, if at all possible, feeling what needs to be felt, but not dwelling there and just being present, just being, in fact.
Absolutely. There is this idea of like, the idea that what's in the way is the way, which I love, Seamus, but that resistance is the thing that actually allows us to grow, to actually test the borders or that resistance. And I think about, things like resistance training, where or using your own body as resistance to build muscle or growth. The fact that embryos don't grow without the resistance or the tension between the embryo itself and the amniotic fluid and the pressure that that is. So that is why the cells divide. So there is this element that we need that resistance to some extent um, to be able to go and grow in a physical sense and an emotional sense and a spiritual sense. And you could think of that resistance as being in many ways. That could be body resistance. It could be, the resistance of other people and, what you believe kind of affirms your views and your feeling and and what you hold of value and what's important to you. And it kind of learns and teaches you what, you really value and the things that are sort of like the non-negotiables for you in a way. It's like part of who you are. So it gets to help to formulate who you are. So we need that little bit of resistance to be able to do that because otherwise we would never get to explore that at all.
Yeah, it's very true. Sometimes I like the idea of exploring because, you know, we as human beings we like to have the control. We like to be the ones in control of where we're going and what's happening, whatever. And that's not always a possibility. I mean, there's so many scenarios where that may not be a possibility, but it's just sometimes, yeah. So that's the whole idea about blooming where you're planted. Sometimes, what we think is not what we want ends up being even better than what we wanted or thought we wanted. Um, it may not feel like it in the beginning, but it certainly allows us opportunities to discover more and to explore and maybe even look at it a little bit like it's a wonderful adventure, this life we're in. So um why not bloom where we're planted, because there can be so many blessings that come with that we aren't even expecting.
Absolutely. And just really is a lesson in what in expectations, and what we think it should be versus what is. We all have an idea of how we want something to go, and we plan, or we just in our mind, we envision, right? It's like, this is how it's going to be. And it's that attachment to that that is often, this idea of it's the attachment to it, which is so hard because we get so attached to whatever that idea is or whatever that vision is that there's no space around that. So there is no opportunity at all to have it change or evolve in any way. And if we can sort of relax around whatever we expect and kind of say, okay, well, this is what I would like to happen, but it's okay if it doesn't, or if it unfolds in a different way, then that's the way it's supposed to unfold. And that's why I love these conversations, because no matter how much we plan, we cannot plan for what everybody shares. So there's always this element of creation or creativity that comes in to this conversation because we speak to what everybody shares.
Yeah, that's so true. I've liked that perspective, Dan, of it's true. And sometimes the conversations go in ways that we never even expected, and they go even deeper than we even expected. And that in itself is a blessing for us, and hopefully for you being part of the conversations as well. But yeah, it's just I just love that sometimes challenges can be the fertile ground in which something even better comes. And and just allowing that and be grateful for, and have some gratitude for um what's happening in your life, because just knowing that better things are coming often. So it's just allowing, allowing. I like how, yes, allowing room for a new and better version of our current expectation. Love that, Seamus.
I mean, yeah, because you get attached to an expectation. Me too. I love that, Seamus. You get attached to something. There's not even room for anything better. There's just, it just is what we envision. But there's nothing beyond that at all, because there are possibilities out there that we never even thought of, that we never envisioned or dreamed. And then we've kind of limited our that possibility if we become too attached to what we think should be.
And
That's
that comes back, reminds me again of what Jack Cornfield wrote about, like that rain model, like of it's everything we're speaking about today, like recognize, accept, investigate, and non-identification. Like it's that same model basically we're talking about here as well. It's around, just being at ease with whatever is going on, knowing that, what's happening is happening. And it mightn't be aligned with the expectations we had. This is going askew and going a different direction than what we had expected. But you know what? Recognize, accept, investigate, get curious with, and detach or non-identify, but or detach and experience back to that word experience what that feels like.
Mhm.
And when you allow yourself to be able to actually go through that kind of four-phase step of whatever happens that kind of goes against or um, contradicts an expectation you had, it opens the door actually for that pathway too. Oh, like you just mentioned, Jan, like oh, this actually now is good that this happened because that previous expectation was yeah, it was a fantastic expectation. But now through this dialogue and through what's happened and through a conversation and through whatever has happened, ah, now here's a new pathway. It's like, a new synapse or a new, pathway being opened up that would never have opened up if you hadn't deliberately created that space through that process of accepting, being ready to accept it, from the middle ground perspective of acceptance to open up the opportunities to emerge out of whatever has happened. And I think that's there. And Breda often talks about this as well, John. It's so there and ready, but we miss that opportunity because we're so tied to the expectations that it limits our ability to see new outcomes and better outcomes out of whatever happens.
I love that, Seamus. And it reminds me of a story, a personal story of something that happened to me when I first started teaching yoga. I planned every class to the to the line. I literally had a printout of what I was going to do and whatever. And I remember creating this class. I remember even what night it was. It was a Thursday night class. I remember I did this whole plan, everything, everybody walks in and everything. And then I looked at the students who were there and realized that I could not do one thing that was on that plan. Like, the poses I had wanted to do and the sequence I'd wanted to do, they couldn't do. And I remember standing there thinking to myself, okay, what do I do now? And I totally had to go off the cuff. Like, I totally had to rely on my resources as a teacher. And I was a fairly new teacher. So that's why I had the script. I just had to rely on my training and my resources. And I had to sit there and wing it or just go with that knowledge, not going blind totally because I did have a background and I had been practicing. And I remember that was sort of the beginning for me of creating no plan for my classes. Like I always have an idea, but not attaching to that plan. And the liberation, and I think that's one of your new words, Seamus, if I'm correct, is the liberation that comes from being able to just look at what's in front of you and go from there. And I mean, I do that every time I teach now. Like I have to look at who's in the room. I have to see who, like, and what I am going through on that given day. And then I have to teach from there. So literally teaching from where I'm at. So blooming where I'm planted at the moment. in a very practical sort of methodical way. Like I really have no choice because otherwise people aren't going to enjoy the class and I'm not going to enjoy teaching.
That makes perfect sense, Jan, what you're saying,
Wish I could do it in other aspects of my life, but
well, we're all works in progress, are we not?
we are. But yes, I wish I could do it in other aspects of my life, but I definitely can do it there.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's really this whole idea, right, of living in the present moment, letting go of the past regrets or worrying about what's going to happen in the future. And it's really about just being present. And so, as Seamus was sort of alluding to earlier, it's instead of giving up, it's really a way to reclaim your energy from all the worry that we tend to bring into these situations, and it brings you back to now, to right now, the present moment, because this is where life is actually happening, not in the past, not in the future, because we don't know what that is per se, but it's happening now. And so the idea of blooming where you're planted is just a beautiful visual for me as a creative. It really, I was almost about to say plants it in my brain, but that wasn't, didn't mean to be punny, but that's what it was about to come out. So
I love that, Mary Jane. Plant it in your brain. Um, the other thing that came to mind as you were speaking, as I was like thinking about my story once again, was this idea, wasn't like I had no fear. Like I was afraid. I was like, oh my gosh, like what do I do now? But it was different. I mean, I really, unless I walked out, I had no choice, So I said, okay, well, can't teach today. But there was this, I mean, I had to move with this element of fear. And I think that that's, something that's very liberating is to realize that you can move, like it's okay to be afraid and to have fear and to move through it and to move with it. Um, and I think there are situations where if you're, fear means a lot. It means that you care about something. It means that, um, fear is doing something even, that's true courage, right? It's not feeling nothing and moving forward. It's, I think, feeling and moving forward. To me, that's what courage is.
Absolutely. That's definitely what courage is. It's just, as I said, that the expression about fear the fear and do it anyways. That's what it is. I mean, do the hard things because sometimes you'll find that there's something even better waiting for you. Doesn't mean it's not difficult at times, just means keep moving forward, um, and living in the present moment.
Absolutely.
Seamus says there's valuable information if you're it. That is definitely true. I've definitely learned that from experience. It's like, what's holding me back? Why is this fear here?
That's right.
It's but I love this. This is such a beautiful conversation. I love the value that all of you are bringing to the conversation.
Absolutely. The conversations are because everybody is here.
Absolutely. That's
Um,
definitely the case.
yeah. Anybody have anything else to share? I mean, feel free to um, share. We'd love to hear.
I've just been taking in everything everyone's been saying. I love that it feels like we're on a podcast in a way. Um, but I was just thinking about how, when we're talking about being present and, not going to toxic positivity and also, just that radical acceptance and going back to the card in Trader Joe's that Jan was talking about, because I don't know what it is about Trader Joe's. I have found the same thing that, like, for some reason, feel much better in Trader Joe's once I step through those doors. Maybe they saged the place, but I just know that when I think about the plant in the soil, and plants, they don't run, they don't walk, they don't, there's no moving forward for them. The only way they moved forward was when they were a seedling flowing in the wind, and then when they landed, um, that's where they bloomed. And it's once they land, it's not about moving, it's about receiving. It's about being real willing to receive, because you can't receive if you're constantly running forward, because you wouldn't be able to stop to actually, you know, let someone hand you something. So I think that, sometimes when things are not going the way we need in the external, it's time to go back to the internal, and it's actually time to, be present, but be present because we don't need to push things. We don't need to hustle. We don't need to, movement is not just forward, movement is upward. Movement is our internal growth. And so, I think it's just I think it's I really enjoy this conversation, because I'm always needing reminders of how we how I need to be always open to receiving, because there's always that need to move forward, and that always implies like external action to prove something, to make something happen, when really things are happening on our behalf without us even really knowing what that is. And I think that's the part that is like, like, what is happening, because we can't see it. All we have is whatever thoughts we have in the moment. And so I think that's why it's so important that if we're nothing is going right externally, that it's time to go internal. It's time to kind of go back into that seedling that we are in the soil, where it's nice and cool and dark, um, and just be ready to receive the rain, be ready to receive the sunshine. Because, it's not so much about I'm trying to be content with where I'm at. I'm willing to accept. I'm willing to be open, to be curious that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at.
Amy, I have to say thank you so much. That was beautiful. Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
I think that one of the things you said is I think about well, whatever you want to believe, the universe, life force, God, or whatever. I find, and I'm in that situation now, when I am not, like, the universe has a way of stopping you um in a physical sense, or in some sense. Um and sometimes that's a forced stopping. Like
Hmm.
the universe will say, okay, you're stopping. I always said, I was go, go, go. I think of the Energizer Bunny kind of thing.
Yes.
Like go, go, go,
Yes.
go, go. And I wouldn't go unless I literally I wouldn't stop unless I literally got sick. It was like, yeah, I would
Mm.
just work, 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 and do, do, do. And then all of a sudden the universe was saying, would give me little messages, like you should really slow down,
Hmm.
you should listen or whatever. And then all of a sudden I wouldn't. And I would be like, okay, you're out for the count. Like you're in bed for 2 weeks because
Yeah.
you need to
Hmm.
rest. And that's what I
Hmm.
found it. So I'm in a similar situation now, not physically, not in a virus kind of sense, where I'm literally having to stay put and
Hmm. Hmm.
bloom where I am planted. I
Oh,
fractured my foot. I fractured my ankle, my
Oh no.
faces. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm literally the universe saying, okay, you are planted. You have to
You
be, you
can't,
have to
we literally cannot move forward. You gotta just stay
right.
put.
You have to
Like,
stay
that makes
put. And
sense. Yeah.
so, I'm thinking to myself as we're having this conversation and you just shared, you know, just be open to receive because the universe is telling you you have to stop and,
Yeah.
listen and receive. Stop, listen,
Hmm.
and receive.
mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jan. Wow. First of all, I hope for a speedy recovery.
Thank
And
you.
second of all, I hope you find what you're meant to receive. I think that would be beautiful to hear what happens from here on out.
I hope so too. Thank you.
So it's so beautiful. Yes, thank you, Amy, for sharing. There's one thing that I've learned about, as we all do here, of course. But when my conversations with Amy, she always comes out with these beautiful little pearls of wisdom. I'm like, wow, look at that. So thank you for sharing that. Just very, very, very beautiful, and looking forward to. Fear is the shadow cast by a truth not yet integrated. It's not the enemy of light, but the invitation to expand. Wow. Yes. Very true, Austin. Very true. Oh, such beautiful things. And I don't know about the rest of you. Jan, I'm really, when we finish, I know we're still conversing, but when we finish speaking, I'm looking forward to the meditation because I think it's going to be awesome. Well, it's always awesome, but I don't know.
Thank you.
I sense it will be even more so today.
Hmm.
Poignant.
Poignant, right? Right. I'm just finishing reading. Also, I want to read it again, his beautiful writing here.
Austin's also a really good source of pearls of wisdom, as is Seamus. As all we all, like I said, as all of us, but it's like, things that make you go,
Well, I love this idea of being remembered. I always say that, we really know everything, we need to know, and we forget constantly.
Yes,
And life is the way of reminding us of that which we really already know. We just forgot.
yes, that's so true. Very true. Ah,
Mm. Yep. Yoga is the practice of remembering, as we say in
yeah,
the yoga world.
very cool.
Mm. Anybody else have anything they want to, any pearls or jewels they want to share with us this morning? We are so all teachers, Austin. Um, I had uh, I guess it was like I don't know, it was a mandala necklace, a phrase on it. And on it, it said, one teaches to learn. And I always felt that I learn more from my students than my students have ever learned from me. Or definitely equal. Like, but I mean, I learned so much from all of you. I learned so much um, from everybody you encounter. They are, I think Mary Jane and I have spoken a number of times, the people like the mirrors, like the mirror of you, what they reflect back is what you need to learn, or what is revealed anyway.
There's such a peacefulness here today. It's okay, Amy. Thank you for. Oh, she did. Left already, but hopefully she will listen to the recording and catch the meditation because I know she was saying she needed that peaceful time. So let's hope she does that.
Absolutely. So should we move into our meditation?
I think that's an awesome plan.
Okay. So take a moment to sit comfortably or lay down if that's your preference, with your feet on the ground or lying down so you feel supported. Allow your hands to rest softly, perhaps over your heart or palms up on your lap. So begin by arriving Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and a gentle exhale through your mouth. Again, inhale slowly and exhale, allowing your body to soften just a little bit. Let your breath find its own rhythm now, not changing it, not controlling it, and just notice. And as you settle, become aware of where you are, this moment, this space. Notice the sensation of your body being held by the chair, by the floor, by the earth. You are supported. You are supported by the people here. Now gently bring your attention inward and notice what is present in this moment. A thought, a feeling, a tightness in the body, and maybe even a sense of resistance. Whatever is here, see if you can name it quietly to yourself without judgment. This is what's here. This is what's true for me right now. Often in mindfulness, we are encouraged to focus on our breath to stay anchored in the present moment. But the breath can also be a distraction or an escape from what we are experiencing right now. So today, instead of moving away from discomfort or resistance, we pause and we lean in a little bit. Maybe there's sadness, maybe longing, frustration, uncertainty. Can you allow it to be here for just a few breaths? You are not broken for feeling discomfort. You are not failing for wishing things were different. You are human. Breathe gently into that knowing. And now see if you can soften any resistance. Notice the places in your body or mind where you might be gripping, pushing, or bracing against what is. With each breath, let go just a little. Loosen the grip. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to have the answers. What if right here, just as you are, is enough? Imagine a seed deep in the soil. It cannot see the sun. It doesn't know when or how it will sprout, but still it begins. It roots down before it ever blooms. You are that seed, planted in this moment. And this moment, however imperfect, holds the potential for growth. Let yourself rest in that. Feel the ground beneath you. Feel the breath moving in and out. And whisper quietly to yourself, I am here. I am letting go of what I thought should be. I am blooming slowly, gently, and in my own way. Take a few deep breaths in and out. And when you are ready, begin to bring awareness back to your surroundings. Feel free to wiggle fingers, toes, move your head side to side, and gently open your eyes, returning to the room, carrying with you the quiet strength of presence. Thank you all for joining us this morning, or this afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're joining us from. We are so, so happy you all took out the time to be here and to share um, your thoughts, your heart. We wish you a great weekend. Our next workshop, online workshop, is June 29th. It's a Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we look forward to seeing you possibly at that. Connect with us during the week. We'd love to hear from you in between these sessions. Many blessings. Have a great weekend. I hope you get outside and enjoy.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a great weekend.
Have a great one, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye, Al. Take care.